What a great couple of days we've had at this conference. I've really been blessed and really enjoyed it. And I'm privileged to be able to be here with you. I explained in my last session that I'm wearing these hipster glasses because I just had eye surgery. I'm too old to get cool. But as a result, all the lights look weird and reading my Bible is kind of challenging, but it's okay. Life is full of victories and losses. And how we handle the wins and the losses is what our life is ultimately composed of. How do you handle success? How do you handle failure? Either one can completely destroy you. And as we've been looking at this week in the book of Joshua, we saw, as Pastor Don shared in the previous session, you dream of having a day like they had, when you're marching around Jericho and boom, the walls fall down and now that city is destroyed. I mean, nobody had to risk their life. Nobody had to actually lift a sword. It was just God did it. And in that amazing encounter in chapter 5 with the commander of the Lord's armies and preparing you for that day. And I don't know about you, but sometimes when I have a big win, I can't wait for the next win. I mean, like the Rams squeaking it out last week. I'm looking ahead to the Super Bowl. I know Cincinnati's kind of scary. The guy, Joe Burrow's not afraid of anything, but I'm just hoping that the Rams will keep the string going. But the truth is, in life, a lot of times, you hit a big one, you have something that's successful, and you think that it's always going to be that way. And sometimes success sets you up for failure. Other times, failure can set you up for success, because when you fail, it's really humbling. Being humbling is usually a pretty good thing for us. One of my favorite lines in a Bob Dylan song is, when you ain't got nothing, you got nothing to lose. And there's a certain recklessness you can have when you have nothing to lose. But either way, success, failure, what do we do next? How do we move forward? And that was the dilemma that Israel was in when we come to chapter 7. They had just had the most amazing victory in, probably 600, 700 at least years of the history of Israel. And boom, Jericho goes down, this mighty city. Now Ai is there. Ai, it's a little piddly city. This should be a piece of cake. And they knew that it would be. But there was a problem. In chapter 7, as he begins, the children of Israel committed a trespass regarding the accursed things for Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zabel, the son of Zerah, the tribe of Judah, and took of the accused things. So the anger of the Lord burned against the children of Israel. So God had told them in the previous chapter, when you go into Jericho after I tip it over, everything that you take that's of value, all of the precious stones and anything like that, destroy the hokey religious stuff, but I want all the treasure to come into the house of the Lord, because we need to get things going. As a nation, we're moving forward, and it takes money to be able to do what we're going to do, and that's what we're doing with what we take in the spoil. But this guy Achan, just one guy, it seemed like, there's so much here. I'm sure that nobody would mind if I just grab a little bit of it for myself. And he did. But God was really upset with him for reasons that really only God completely knows. This was a huge deal to him. I mean, a lot of times you see people do all kinds of stuff against God where God's like, he blows it off. Other times, there's something that is more significant than you would think. So Achan did this, and that sets the stage for when they, after that victory, the next place they needed to attack was Ai. And as they talked in verse 3, it says, went to Joshua, these spies that went and checked out Ai to see what was going on there. And they said, don't let all the people go up, but just, 2,000 or 3,000 people can go up and attack Ai. They were confident. They're like, Ai is going to be a piece of cake compared to Jericho. And so they're pumped and they're excited about it. So about 3,000 people went up against Jericho. You remember the story. And they just got whipped by Ai. They chased them away. 36 Israeli soldiers died, and they were devastated. Joshua in verse 6, it says, he tore his clothes and fell to the earth on his face before the ark of the Lord all day until evening. He and the elders of Israel, and put dust on their heads. And Joshua said, alas, Lord God, why have you brought this people over the Jordan at all, to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites, to destroy us? So he goes from a high to where now 36 casualties, they lost to Ai. They only sent a small number of soldiers, and he couldn't handle loss. Remember, Joshua lived so far most of his life out in the wilderness, wandering around, helping Moses. Now here he is, the big leader. He meets the commander of the Lord's armies. They take Jericho, and he's on a high. He's like on top of the world. And now this little loss at Ai, and he's ready to quit. Sometimes you have no idea how much, even though something really good happens, how much it can take out of you, that then the slightest thing that goes against you, it can absolutely devastate you. We are fragile people emotionally, and if the right set of circumstances happen, boy, we can be crushed where somebody would look at it and go, what's the big deal about that? And that's kind of the way I look at this. But finally, God said to him down in verse 10, so the Lord said to Joshua, get up. Why do you lie thus on your face? Israel has sinned, and they have also transgressed my covenant, which I commanded them, for they've even taken some of the accursed stuff and have stolen and deceived and put away among their own stuff, all this stuff. So then it goes on down through the passage. They pray to God. God reveals which family it was. And finally, they find out it's Achan. And they ask Achan, did you take some stuff from Jericho? And he's like, oh, yeah, I grabbed a few souvenirs. And he comes and brings the stuff out. And, it's some gold. There's some fancy outfit. And, it's like he acted like it wasn't a big deal. But it was a big deal to God. And God had the people take Achan and all of his family and cattle and everything else that he had, and they stoned them to death, and then they burned them with fire, and then they stacked rocks up to make a place that you don't ever want to forget, that when you go against what God tells you, this is what can happen. It seems like an overreaction to me, but they never forgot it. They always remembered. It's kind of a big deal what God tells us to do. So now there's still Ai, but this time it's going to be different. They didn't say, okay, a few thousand people, we can whip these guys, no problem. Instead, he began to, first of all, seek the Lord. In chapter 8, the Lord said to Joshua, don't be afraid or dismayed. Take all the people of war with you and arise and go up to Ai, because I've given it into your hand, the king of Ai, his people, his city, and his land. And so you shall do to Ai and to its king as you did to Jericho and its king. Only its spoil and its cattle you can take as booty for yourselves. Lay an ambush for the city behind it. So God tells them, This time, you get to keep the stuff. The last time, I was keeping it because I really needed it for the spiritual life of the children of Israel. But this time, you're going to take these guys, and then you can go ahead and keep the booty as well. But this time, Joshua, it says, arose and all the people of war to go up against Ai. And Joshua chose 30,000 mighty men of valor and sent them away by night. Before he took 3,000, now he takes 30,000, and that's not even all of them. He sends his 30,000 best guys, and he has them loop around at night behind Ai. And you remember the story. They're hiding there. In the morning, Joshua comes with the rest of the troops. They start to challenge Ai. Ai's cocky because they won the last battle. They come out of the city to go after Joshua and his guys, and on a signal, the guy, 30,000 troops from behind, swept in, conquered the city, and burned it. These guys are trying to fight, and they turn around, and their city is smoking, and everything was bad, and they realized, we're in huge trouble. So it was a brilliant strategy this time. It wasn't like, send a few thousand people. It's, okay, 30,000 people behind the city. The rest of us are going to spread out. We're going to attack. As soon as they come out, we're going to run. They're going to think, hey, this is just like it was before. And then you guys come in from behind, wipe out the city, and they'll be devastated. And it worked, and they ended up killing the king, and everyone lived happily ever after, and they ended up winding it up with a great victory. And so there were all kinds of lessons that they learned, and you can read through the chapter and see all the details of that. But see, ultimately, you have a great victory at Jericho. Then you have a humiliating defeat at Ai. But then God uses that defeat to set them up for a great victory. It would have been a lot harder even if they had attacked Ai, with all of their forces. But now, once they lost, they learned it's possible for us to lose. It feels terrible to lose. And so this time, we're going to be smarter. This time, we're going to take a different approach, and we're certainly going to cry out to the Lord and ask for his wisdom so that we can do what he wants us to do. So victory at Jericho against all odds. Failure at Ai, where really the odds should have been in your favor. And then after a devastating defeat, now a victory at Ai where you go, God, you're amazing. And, this is so often our lives. Sometimes you have a great day, things go well. Other times, things just aren't going well. I know as a pastor, sometimes I preach a sermon and I think that really came across pretty well. But then the next one, I'll try just as hard, and I just feel like, I don't know. People always come up and say, oh, that was great, but it's the same people. So, and I've noticed they'll say that to anybody. So it really doesn't mean much. But I'm not always on. I don't always nail it. I don't always preach in a way that's awesome. And quite often, when things are going well, it's setting me up for some sort of trial, something else that's going to happen, something else that will challenge me. After a victory, can sometimes get sloppy, but after a loss, I have to decide, do I even want to do this anymore? Is this something that's worth me doing? And for me as a pastor, I've been a pastor since the 70s, and it's like I'm always going, okay, at what point do I just hang it up? At what point maybe am I just losing it? And they go, I don't know, I don't feel like I'm losing it, but I know all kinds of guys who are losing it that think they aren't. So when am I that guy? And so there's always this hesitation and this question of, is this still working? Is this still worth the effort that I put into it? Would people be better off with somebody else doing what I do? And that's a challenge that we always fight in life. And amazingly, when things go well, we sometimes learn the wrong lessons. And when things go poorly, we sometimes learn the wrong lessons. But this story, these chapters here, give us a beautiful way to follow the lessons that God had for them, and these lessons are lessons for us as well. One of the first ones is, for sure, don't touch God's stuff. Don't think that the stuff that's God's is also yours. Now, as a pastor, I suppose I've never, if anything, I'll take a pen home or something like that. I just make sure I buy stuff for the church and I don't get reimbursed for it. So I want to make sure that I don't owe God, like I haven't ripped him off. But there are people who, in ministry, who just start to think like God's stuff is their stuff. And you have to remind yourself, no, it is so important to take care of God first. It's why the tithe isn't your last 10%, it's supposed to be your first 10%, because as with them, God's saying, this first victory, this is about me getting some assets. I'm doing the work, for one thing, and I'm getting some assets to put with the tabernacle so that there's a way that we can support the Levites, that we can build what we need to build and do what we need to do. So keep your hand out of my money. You'll get money, but keep your hands out of mine. And I think that sometimes the longer we do ministry, the easier it is to just think of God's stuff as our stuff. When I left Calvary Costa Mesa to go and pastor my church, the church was in a huge mess. It was really on the brink of failure. It had been a big church, and some things happened that made it collapse. And so I looked at it, and our church had a $50,000 a month rent on the facility, and there were like a couple hundred people in the church who were hurt and bitter and who weren't going to trust the church to give them any money. So I had to decide, if I'm going to try to pull this thing together, one of the first things that I had to do is, for the first 6 months I was there, I didn't take a paycheck. And I'm not saying that to make me something special. I couldn't. I had other staff. I needed to pay them. I actually took my own money to even pay our mission support because we were in that desperate of straits. But I understood that I have to put the things of God first, and then he'll take care of me. And so once I kind of sapped my savings, then there was money coming in, and I was able to be paid, and it all worked out fine. But there's a proverb that says, build your field and then build your house. It's the idea that what you need to do is create something that can reproduce, that can be productive before you take for yourself. You're way better off working on the side, doing what you have to do to make sure that God's taken care of first. And that's something that, obviously Achan was confused about this, but after he and his family got stoned, and burned, probably other people were like, okay, if God says that the spoils from a city is his, I think we ought to go with that. I think we ought to go, yeah, he needs to do that now. God didn't need money. He didn't need precious metals, but it was all for the people ultimately. But you and I can't afford to start thinking like God's money is our money. That there's really not a difference. I built this church up. I did this. I could easily take more than I do, and man, that's dangerous. And it's a lesson that we have to learn from this passage, that, be clear and distinct in what it is that's committed to the Lord as opposed to, what it is that is taken for your own good. Now, if you're in church ministry and you're a full-time employee, people are giving money, and part of it goes to pay you, to allow you to live. And there's nothing wrong with that. After they took Ai, then it's like, okay, this is yours. But it's always important that God's taken care of first, and that you keep a real clear distinction between the two, if that makes sense. A second thing that I see from this story is the collateral damage. It bothers me that Achan is the guy that stole the stuff. But why do his family and his cattle and everything have to be killed? Not only that, how about the 36 Jewish soldiers who didn't know what was going on at Ai, and they got killed? Well, here's the thing, and if we don't learn this in life, we will constantly walk around baffled. Everything that we do wrong has collateral damage. The decisions that I make always affect more than just me. Other people are damaged when I act in an unfaithful way, and I need to remember those consequences. It may not seem fair, but God hasn't created this world as an automaton that when you do this, then this happens. That's not his idea of how things are done in this world. That's not the way this world works. So it's really important for me to remember, after I've had a good day and now I'm heading toward my next battle, I need to be careful, because what I decide to do can hurt others. If I slop together a message and it's not very good, I can go, no big deal to me. I'm fine. They're not gonna fire me for it. But what if that week there was somebody whose life was going to be changed by what I was supposed to say, and I slacked off? Or, I spent a couple days at a conference right before Sunday, and then I'm like, I'll be able to throw this together. Collateral damage. You never are making decisions that only affect you. They affect your family. They affect the people of God. They affect your friends. It's not just you. The effects of our choices spread out in a broad way. And so it's important for us, and we can certainly see it here, because of one guy just bending the rules in a way that didn't seem like it was that big a deal, really. People in Israel's history did much worse. But see, this was following up their first victory, and God needed to teach them a lesson. And as a result, this turned out into a significant time, and the damage was horrible just beyond that guy. You can take chances and think, well, I'll suffer the consequences. I feel lucky. But when you compromise, when I compromise, we're endangering more people than we even realize. We could never foresee it. Achan never would have guessed that 36 of his fellow soldiers were going to die because he stole from what was supposed to be the Lord's. And we can never know the ultimate outcomes, but we need to take it seriously, because there's collateral damage to everything that we do. We're all a part of a team. We're all trying to work together for the Lord. And so that's something that I think that we need to remember for sure. Another lesson that I take away from this story and from this passage is that we need to be really careful as to how we follow victories, because you can get cocky and prideful, and you can just start thinking, I think I got this now. Oh, it was tough in the beginning, but boy, it's a piece of cake now. I can begin to think that, well, we crushed Jericho. Really? You guys just walked and honked horns. But, now little Ai, God will sometimes allow us to fail just because he thinks that we think it's about us. And so we cannot presume upon God when we do whatever simple things, like if I'm speaking to a group of kindergartners, that's every bit as important as if I'm speaking to a large group of adults, or if I'm on the radio or whatever. It's no difference, man. It's what you do. And if you think that because you've done something before that makes you somebody now, it doesn't. You're always, and I am, one mistake away from blowing it all, from losing it all. And so the humility that's necessary after a victory is probably more important than the humility that naturally comes to you after a loss. Sometimes a loss will help you to be humble, but a victory, when things go well, that's when you really need to watch out, because it can be setting you up for a failure. They learned that here. It's like, okay, we got this is going to be a piece of cake. The kind of boldness and confidence and cockiness and pride is what ultimately, it was Achan's pride that caused him to do what he did and do all this damage. And then you see a hint in Joshua of pride that he's ready to quit because of one loss, 36 soldiers, that's it, I'm staying in the dirt, I'm done. You can't afford to be a big baby. That's what God told him. Get up, man. This happened for a reason. Do you want to understand what that reason is, and do you want to do something different? Or do you just want to sit and wallow in your self-pity? Life is tough. It's tough for everyone at different times. But boy, we cannot afford to be overly confident in our own abilities, in our own performance. The truth is, whatever it is that you've ever succeeded at, you weren't that great. There were other people that helped make that work. There were other people who made you who you are. No man is an island. We need to understand that, wow, I'm blessed to be able to be in a circumstance with the right people that sometimes it clicks and sometimes it goes well. But it's a danger when we begin to think that I'm established, I've got this, enough people tell me I'm great, I pay them to tell me that, and I'm fine. Man, that is a trap. Now, another thing, let me speak a minute on methodology. Because, a lot of times people who are so proud of their victories, they want to keep doing things the same way that they did it when they won. The children of Israel didn't do that. I'm sure there were some people who, if you had said, okay, next what we're going to do is march around Ai one time, and then again, 6 times, and then we'll march around 7 times and honk horns. Oh, first we have to send a couple of spies into a brothel, make friends with a prostitute, and we'll do it like we did it before. And that's the kind of nostalgia that locks you in. See, God rarely does what he does in the same way twice. And so that's why, to me, it's kind of misguided to, even though I lived through the Jesus movement, but I'm not trying to bring back the Jesus movement. I'm not wearing bell-bottom jeans and singing hippie songs. And, well, I can't grow my hair long anymore. I doubt if I could even afford a Volkswagen van. But there are people who are like, we got to bring back that spirit. No, we don't. It's not coming back. When you understand what God does, Jesus said it as he was talking to Nicodemus, talking about the Holy Spirit. The same word for spirit is the same Greek word for wind. And he goes, think about the Spirit, the wind. It blows wherever it wants to. You hear it coming, you see it going, but you have no idea where it came from or where it went. So is everyone who is born of the Spirit. So you know what? God doesn't just replicate methodology. He doesn't just say, you do it this way and it works. Why? Because then who even needs him? Who needs the Spirit? And so there are nostalgic people who just want to repeat whatever was done before. I remember one time I was talking to Pastor Chuck, and he said, Dave, if I ever write a book about why God blessed Calvary Chapel, and I start saying things like, we taught the Bible verse by verse, we allowed contemporary music, we let people dress casually, he said, if I ever write that book, shoot me. And I go, then why did God bless Calvary Chapel? Because I go, a lot of people think it's because we had long Bible studies, we had Sunday morning, Sunday night, and midweek service, and went through the Bible chapter by chapter, book by book. He said, God blessed Calvary Chapel for one reason, and that was his grace, pure and simple. It wasn't the methodology. One time, Chuck and I were traveling somewhere, and we, at that time at Calvary Costa Mesa, the stage, the back wall, had a big brown semicircle chunk of wood. Maybe some of you saw it. Well, we went to some church in the Midwest somewhere, a little Calvary, and they had one of those brown semicircles on their stage. And Chuck was like, look at that. And when we went home, we tore that thing apart. Because it's like, no, that isn't Calvary Chapel. Some guy just made that thing, we stuck it up there. But that's not what we do. You don't do what we do. I remember when some of the first senior pastors conference we had, guys were just starting to go out and plant other Calvary chapels. And Chuck told them, he said, don't go out. If God calls you to New York or to Boston or to Minneapolis, don't go there and do what we do in Costa Mesa. You go to who you're called to, and you listen to the Holy Spirit and see what he wants to do there. And it won't look like Costa Mesa, and it shouldn't look like Costa Mesa. But I think there are a lot of people who are just so trying to reproduce whatever happened at one time that they get locked into their traditions. And that would be as foolish as trying to conquer Ai by marching around it and honking on horns and looking for a friendly prostitute. It's just, no, that wasn't what made it work. It was God. It was his heart. And so now, but at the same time, think about it. There are people today who are wanting to make the church new and hip and young and everything. And so you hear this all the time. Look, the message doesn't change, but the methods change. Now, I'm okay with that statement, but here's what it ends up looking like, and I'm just going to try to point out the subtlety of it for you for a minute. If what that means is I need to be flexible to what God is leading me to do, then okay. But if it means I need to find out what methods are working other places, and I need to do that, I can take the gospel and put it onto a model that is a commercial model, that is a show business model, that is a model of, TED Talks or that's, to do that is to act like methods don't matter. It's only the message that matters. It's very subtle and it sounds really good. So, hey, if you're wanting to have during the early times of hardcore music, and sometimes you have a hardcore band, it's like, hey, it's okay, there's the Gospels there. I don't know if that was necessarily the best method to communicate the gospel. But the point is, you can't just make up your methods, because as we saw here, what did he do? He goes, we've repented and humbled ourselves, but we also need to have a really good strategy that makes sense. And so their method wasn't just like, well, what other countries do. God started him off by saying, here's a hint. You need to put some armies behind them. And then Joshua went from that and constructed this brilliant strategy. It was a strategy and a method for them that they had never tried, but it wasn't just any strategy. And so in the same way that during the American Revolution, the British had a really stupid strategy for warfare. And I don't really love the British, but we owe them a lot of things, just like we owe the French a lot of things, but I wouldn't want to be one. But they would just march in a straight line, and the Americans would be hiding in trees and picking them off. The method can kill you if you get the wrong method. So as you're seeking the Lord, as you're repenting before him, and again, that's what we see him doing. On my face before God, repenting of our sins, asking him for wisdom, asking him to help us, then God's answer becomes, here's a strategic choice that you can make, that I am leading you to make. So don't think that your methods don't matter. Methods do. But you don't want to just repeat the methods from the past. That's silly. That's nostalgic and meaningless. So set methods aside, but you get with God, you humble yourself before him, you beg him for guidance, and you listen and see what methods ultimately he wants to use in order to give you the victory in life. And I would propose to you that in your churches, in your Bible studies, and everything you do in your lives, guess what? Getting the right method is a hugely important point. So you've got to be connected to him in order for him to lead you and guide you. It isn't enough to just go, I have the gospel. Now, I think my method is going to be to just go out and yell at people and watch them accept the Lord. I mean, some people do that, and somebody gets saved, so if that's what you're called to do, it's fine. I have a friend who in my church who goes out at the beach and just, he used to have a sign that showed hell, and he would yell at people and try to bring them to the Lord. And once in a while, somebody would get saved. But he recently changed his ministry, and he's out there acting kind of weird with a sign. But his sign says, let us pray for you if you would like prayer. Now, people are coming up to him and going, wow, will you pray for me? People almost never resent someone being willing to pray for them. I'm a police chaplain, and in every situation, no matter how bad, no matter how weird it is, only one time did I ever ask someone, would you like prayer? And they go, no, I'd rather not. But out of hundreds of times when they go, oh yeah, that would be great. I don't question them on what they believe. It's just like, boy, using the right method with the right spirit opens the door for you to share the gospel. One time on a Sunday afternoon, a guy in Newport Beach out on the peninsula had killed himself, shot himself. And so I got the call as a chaplain, and I went out there, and it was just a weird scene. And this guy's kids were there. The next door neighbor was a lawyer, and he was there. And I'm tired. I just preached 3 services, and here I am trying to help. And I could tell they weren't very, I'm like, oh, here's the chaplain. And they're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, what do I? So I just started helping. And each of them, I would walk them upstairs so they could say goodbye to their father. His body was upstairs. And I just tried to be there sensitive. And they were goofing around, joking, and I'd kind of do it too. But while I was doing it, I was going, this is stupid. I mean, I'm not able to do what I'm called to do. There hasn't been an opening for me to share anything about Jesus. They know I'm a pastor, and that's it. And I was kind of frustrated. I was thinking, I could be home taking a nap right now like I usually am on Sunday afternoons. And finally, after the coroner took the body and everything, the family walked me out to my car. And the lawyer that lived next door to them said, hey, Dave, you're a pastor, right? I go, yeah. He goes, we've all appreciated that you were just here helping us and you weren't preaching at us. So we want you to just give us your spiel. And I got to share the gospel, and it was such a blessing. And I heard back from him and one of the kids that saying, boy, that really made me think about my soul and my eternity. And I'm like, that was probably a better response than I got Sunday morning in 3 church services. But it had to be the right method. It couldn't be me coming in there and going, okay, look, here's how it is. I'm the pastor. I'm the man of God. I need to do. Man, we've got to listen to God so that he leads us. We know what the message is, but methodology often is everything. And so in this story, that's what we see. The judgment ended up coming as a result of theft, embezzlement, but at the same time, the immediate consequence of it was they got cocky, they rushed in, bad methodology, everyone paid the price for it. In the end, when we see them laying before the Lord, crying out to him, asking him for help, asking him for guidance, asking him for methodology, give us a clue, then he let them kind of wing it on some of the methodology. He just gave them a hint. Yeah, it'd be good to have some guys go around back. And then they're like, whoa, yeah, here's what we can do. But, that's what we see here. And we fool ourselves if we think that we don't need to get serious in a humble way to come before the Lord to say, okay, God, here's this challenge. How do I do this? I'm not worthy. I'm not like, yep, I've done this 100 times before. This is a piece of cake. It's like, no, it's not a piece of cake. I mean, they asked me just a few days ago about doing the teaching the Bible class, and I just didn't give it a second thought. Oh, yeah, sure, I'd be glad to. I've taught whole classes on that before. And then I get this eye surgery, and I can't see very well, and I'm looking out, and it's just a mass of something. I mean, if you guys had all slipped out, I probably wouldn't even know. And I'm looking at my Bible, and I'm really like, okay, what's it say here? I'm trying to go on what I know it says. And all of a sudden, I'm not so confident. I'm like, and I don't know. I was in that session, but I have no idea if it was any good or not. But, it's like, when you get to the point where you're not sure, then sometimes God will do something really amazing. But when you're cocky, when you're overly confident, when you think, I've got this, and you're setting yourself up sometimes for an AI. And don't ever forget that. One last thing I want to suggest to you is that every one of us in life and in ministry, you're going to have Jerichos and you're going to have AIs. You're going to win some and you're going to lose some. Sometimes your greatest lessons come in your greatest failure. But life just isn't perfect. And the fact that we never know when we're starting something, whether it's going to really boom or whether it's going to fall on its face, is something that causes us to fall on our faces ahead of time and go, God, I need your help here. I really want you to lead, and I'm willing to look like a fool if you're okay with it. This is for you. I just want to do what you want me to do. And if you go into ministry thinking that it's usually going to be successful, no, it isn't. I mean, if you think that, if you're teaching a Bible study or you're a pastor and you think, I pretty much nail it every week, you're delusional, because you don't. It's not that way. There's wins and losses. We have to be prepared for both. I'm not sure whether it's a win or a loss that presents the greatest threat to me and to God's ministry through me moving forward. But here's the thing. There's always collateral damage, and yet we are called to be the body of Christ. Often, people that I love, people who I consider my brothers in the Lord and those who are close to me, and people that I really care about, I see them doing stupid things and failing. I see them getting caught up in their own egos. I see them making moral decisions that are devastating. I've seen this over and over again, and I sometimes just feel like, God, I just should just be on my own. I don't know who my friends are, because I'm like, half of my friends in ministry seem to be going completely nuts on one side of the spectrum, and the other half are completely nuts on the other side of the spectrum, and they're all leaving the Word of God in order to go yell about politics or health, vaccines and all that. It's like, I sometimes go, God, this is depressing. But then I realize, and I remember, we're all a part of a team, and sometimes we're going to have people that we love who love God, who end up getting cocky, falling on their faces, ending up looking foolish. But we can't separate ourselves from the other soldiers in the army. We just have to realize sometimes we suffer because of collateral damage. You're looking at Israel here. Israel didn't do anything. One guy did something, and perhaps his family knew about it since they got killed too. I'm pretty sure his cattle didn't know about it, but everybody else was just like, we did what we knew to do. But in your life and in your ministry, sometimes there's going to be tragedy. Sometimes there's going to be failure. Sometimes people that you trust and count on are going to do something really stupid. But you need to remember, we're all a part of the same army. We're all on the same team. I can't possibly, the only way that I can be like, yeah, only people like me is if I run my own army. Anytime I'm involved with anyone else, they're going to be all over the map, and so am I. It just doesn't look like that to me, because when I look at me, it seems like I'm right, because everything I do I think is right, just like you, just like everyone else. But we need to remember, we are in this battle together, as brothers and sisters in Christ, as members of the body of Christ, as soldiers in his army. And you know what? Some guy messes up, it hurts you. You mess up, it hurts others. Sorry, that's all you can do if you're going to have humans doing the work of God. But as in this case, we need to regularly fall on our faces and seek him and see what God would do, because we all also experience a victory. When any of us has something great going on, we're like, wow, we can share in that excitement as well. When I have friends who I'll see something really great happen in their ministry, and I'm like so excited. And people go, I don't know, are you jealous at all? No, man, we're all in the same army. I don't want the extra problems that would come from what they're doing. I'm just glad they're on my team. When I was in seminary, we had a guy teach who was one of the most brilliant people I've ever known. He was a philosophy professor at Berkeley, and he taught part-time at Biola. But he got up and talked, and I'm like, most of these guys don't have the philosophical background to even have a clue as to what he's talking about. But he was way over almost everyone's head. At the end, our student body president, who was an Okie, he got up there and he goes, Dr. Hanna, I didn't understand a word you said, but I'm glad you're on our side. And for me, looking at each of you, all the unique talents and gifts that you have, we can see differently on a lot of things, but I'm glad you're on my side. We only win this when we do it together. Let's expect collateral damage, but let's not quit on the army. Let's not fall away and divide. And, as I was just talking to somebody about, Evie, who's going to be teaching on John 17, I go, what's amazing about that chapter is, here's Jesus, ready to go suffer and die. And what he cares about is, God, please help your people, my disciples, help them to get along with each other so that the world will know that you have sent me. That's pretty heavy. More than winning a battle, it's like if God's people don't get along, Jesus loses credibility. So let's realize, we're all in the same army. We all mess up. When we do, we're going to be determined to learn the lessons, do it better the next time, but we're all in this together. Don't ever forget that. Lord, thank you for this passage of Scripture and for the reality that it represents, that in our lives we win some and we lose some. Sometimes it's our fault when we lose, and sometimes we lose and it has nothing to do with us, but we own it all and we hang together, and we are your unified army to take the gospel to people who need to hear it. Lord, help us not to just fake it on our methods or just borrow other people's methods. Help us to hear from you about our methods as much as we hear from you about the message. And God, we will be determined to give you all the glory for anything good that you manage to do through our lives. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.